Okay, Saturday night I did the live stream with Kaz, and near the end of it I brought up likely scenarios or possible scenarios dealing with the election here. And one of the things I mentioned is Trump has declared the winner. Biden refuses to concede. Even after Trump being certified the winner, Trump gets inaugurated. We have states starting to secede from the Union, and we end up in a Civil War 2.0 scenario. People have said for years now that, oh, it's not going to happen that way. It can't happen that way. You're not going to have blocks of states that are going to line up to fight another group. It's going to be rural against urban. I think we kind of see in the elections, doesn't matter what the people of an individual state believes, wants, or votes. It's the people that control the state that determine what happens with that state. Now, I mentioned in the live stream that I could see the U.S. getting partitioned into 4 sections. One section which would be the remnant of the United States of America, the Union, and 3 sections which would be part of the Neo-Confederacy, if you want to think of it that way. But I referred to it as the Democratic Republic of America, the DRA, which would be the socialist version of the US. Now, I got the stuff marked out on the map here. I think we're going to be looking more towards just the 3 pieces, not 4. Now, how is this going to work out? Trump gets certified in December as the winner of the election. Or potentially, this does work the other way around. Biden gets certified as the winner of the election, but Trump refuses to concede because of the election fraud. Either way, the country's divided. You have riots and that stuff, which will be in the larger cities. I do not anticipate too much of that being in the north because, as we've seen, Antifa and BLM are not winter soldiers. They think anything below the temperature of 50 degrees is freezing cold. You will see these purple-headed freaks out at 50 degrees above zero, wearing winter jackets and thick winter hats, while everyone else is still walking around in t-shirt and shorts. I see that every year in my area. And as we've seen with their little performance since 2016, when it gets cold, when it gets wet, when it gets rainy, Antifa does not show up. So I don't anticipate we're going to have a ton of rioting and that stuff over the winter here. What rioting there will probably be down here in the southern part of the United States where it'll be relatively warm. Places you would probably see rioting then would be in California, probably Texas, just to prove a point, Georgia, Florida, probably Virginia, the Carolinas. And then probably around St. Louis, Kansas City. Those are usually hot spots that are good for that. But it does snow and get cold in Missouri. We get into January. We have the inauguration. I'm going to go off the scenario that Trump is declared the winner. He has his inauguration. The left goes crazy at the inauguration, like we've seen in 2016, but this time they're going to get violent. They're going to try having a massive uprising. It's going to be an outright riot, not going to be a protest. The media will call it a protest. It'll be a riot inside D.C. They will burn areas. They will shoot people, kill people, knife them. You know, they're going to go full bore. Within a week of Trump becoming the certified winner and he is inaugurated, I think California will be the first state to secede. Why? Because they threatened to do that in 2016 when Trump was inaugurated. They were the ones saying that they wanted to leave the Union. They wanted to leave the U.S. So I think they're going to be the first state to go. After that, the next state that'll be number 2 will probably be New York. Number 3, well, it's going to be a rush at that point to be the 3rd state. I think California will become the seat of power for the western part of the DRA. New York will become the seat of power for the eastern part of the DRA. These are the states that I figure will be DRA states. So in the west, we're going to have Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and I think Utah. Why Utah? Because the majority of that state is controlled and owned by the federal government. There is not that large of a population there. And it would not be that hard for them to be coerced because of who's all around them to join the new DRA. As I said before, it doesn't matter what the voters, the people of the state think. This is what will be done by the state governments. Now, over in the eastern bloc here, we'll basically have from Minnesota to the coast, from Maine to the southern border of Virginia. So we're going to have Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. This entire area will be the eastern part of the DRA with their headquarters of power. Their little capital will be inside New York. This area, the DRA, will certify and inaugurate Biden or potentially Harris as their new president. Now, after the inauguration in January, things start warming up. So you're going to see more rioting continuing. It's going to get worse and worse in the major cities. You're going to see people fleeing the major cities, trying to move out into the rural areas. There's going to become a problem trying to find homes in the rural areas as sellers out in the country refuse to sell to people coming out of the big cities. They'll refuse to take the offers, refuse to accept the offers for sale of that home or apartment or condo, townhouse, whatever the hell it turns out to be. Whatever they're trying to get into to get out of the major cities. That means that the major cities will become more and more of strongholds for the leftists. Now, the financial markets. Financial markets will go down considerably. They will have already started their steep angle downward after Trump has certified the winner in December because of rioting and protests. Once we have the inauguration, they're going to start going full bore. You're going to see the markets going downhill considerably. We have the inauguration. We have starting to secede. I'd say within 2 weeks of the first state seceding, California, you're going to have pretty much all the states that are going to be in the DRA will have seceded at that point, or they're going to be at the point where they're getting ready to officially announce. You're going to have chaos going on across the United States. In New York City at the United Nations, they will be having emergency meetings. At these meetings, they will be discussing the declining security situation in the United States. They will be discussing how important the United States is to the world, to it security-wise, with our military, economically, with our trade. As they see the declining situation, they're going to see that the country is splitting up. They're going to state that they believe Trump is not the winner of the election, and they're going to throw their weight behind Biden. You will have a Security Council meeting that will occur, and they will discuss, well, the General Council will have a meeting discussing should they send in a United Nations protection force to try to stabilize the United States with the eventual goal of a peaceful transition of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden, who they will believe and say is the winner of the election. After that is approved by the General Assembly, you will see it go over to the Security Council. The Security Council will meet without a United States representative because the United Nations will not recognize the existing representative that was chosen by Donald Trump. If they do accept a representative, it'll probably be Hillary Clinton, who the Biden team is saying they want to tap for their UN representative. Security Council has their vote. They agree to the establishment of United Nations Protective Force and UNPRO-4 to be stationed in the newly formed Democratic Republic of America. The head of this UNPRO-4 will be primarily Communist China. They will ask for assistance from other nations, primarily monetary and equipment and logistics wise. Now, I've heard people say for a year the Chinese do not have enough rowboats to invade Taiwan, let alone the United States. No, they don't have enough rowboats, but what they do have is their commercial shipping fleet. All of those aircraft, all of those ships for Chinese companies are property of the Chinese government. And when the Chinese government says they need it, they're required to turn it over. So you will see ports on the East Coast will start bringing in these United Nations Protective Force personnel, and the media will really play it up that they're here to protect them from Trump and his neo-Nazi regime. They're here to stop the rioting, provide security, and so forth. Those troops will move right up to on the border to establish a major DMZ. So you're going to have them coming in here, ports on the West Coast. Hawaii will get occupied. You have ports on the East Coast, which are also controlled by the Chinese. They can bring in troops there also. But my gut tells me the East Coast here will fall under the jurisdiction of the European Union. Now in the Midwest here, say from Ohio to Minnesota, I could see that. You could see some Chinese in there. You could see some European Union. It might be kind of a mix. It's kind of hard to say where the cutoff is going to be. Now, how the troops will get in through here, more than likely, they would come in through Canada. That's where that whole deal on with the Trudeau government, allowing the passage of Canadian troops onto Canadian soil, or Chinese troops onto Canadian soil for the protection of their assets and interests. Well, you have the UN mandate for a protection force in the United States. Trudeau will be more than happy to allow passage of large formations of Chinese troops through their territory to get into their staging areas. Now, I know people are going to say, well, they can just fly them in. They don't need to send them overland. Yes, they do need to send them overland. You cannot send everything in by aircraft. The bulk of what you transport has to go in overland. That will go in over highways and it'll go in over rail. Most of the stuff that I think we'll see coming in here will probably be by rail off of Canadian railroads, because that'll be the quickest and most cost-effective way to get the equipment there. Same thing, whatever troops come in, they'll set up on their DMZ on their state borders. Now, what's going to happen with the actual citizens of the United States and the military? Inside the Union here, the main part of the United States, obviously they will mobilize. You're going to see massive enlistments into the U.S. military, into the National Guard, all branches. The bulk of the training centers in the U.S. military are in here, especially down in this area. So that's where most of your training centers are. They'll be able to absorb that influx and get them trained and get them out. You also have a considerable number of the arsenals are inside this area also. That will supply additional vehicles, additional weapons, and equipment. There are considerable stores of equipment out in California. Those would obviously get seized and used by the UN Protection Force coming in. But officially they'll say it's part of the military for the newly established DRA. Now in the DRA territories you will see massive defections. You will see National Guard and reservist units, Army, Marine, Navy, and Air Force when they get their orders stating that their state has seceded and they are going to deploy for potential protection operations against the fascist United States. You're going to have quite a few of those troops that are going to defect. They're going to disappear. You're going to have probably up to company-size elements that will just say, screw it. They're going to disappear. They'll go into the mountains, into the woods, wherever they can. You will have law enforcement in a lot of the DRA also that are going to disappear. And when they disappear, they're going to take their body armor with them, they'll take their weapons with them, and whatever else they can take from their police station. Now, the equipment that gets left behind at the armories, at the police stations in those areas, I got a feeling you're going to see a lot of that is going to get sabotaged. Things like with equipment the National Guard and reserves cannot deploy with out into where they anticipate they're going to hide and run and gun from. Something that I could see happening very easily is they sabotage it like we trained to do in Korea and in Germany. War happens, you got to take everything with you. If you can't take it with you, you got to destroy it, deny its use to the enemy. Quickest ways I could see going on this, welding the engine mounts, welding that engine directly to its mount, which is connected to the frames of the vehicles, and then draining the oils from it, starting the engines up, revving them into a high rev, and let them burn out and seize up. Gun tubes for artillery, that one's pretty straightforward. You weld pieces of metal going down the tube. Maybe someone mixes up some homemade thermite, tosses that into tubes also, messes them up, welds the breeches shut. Aircraft, there's lots of ways you can mess up an aircraft. There's a lot of electronics in there. The engines, it won't take much. It won't take that many tools tossed into the turbine in order to rip it to pieces. Or just generally set them on fire. That always worked before too, in World War II. So you're going to see a considerable amount of sabotage on military equipment in those areas. Active duty personnel that are trapped on active duty bases that refuse to follow the orders of the DRA, they're basically going to disappear. They're going to start making their way towards home if they're inside the Union territory. If they stay behind Confederate lines here, they'll probably join the resistance, tack on with reservists, tack on with law enforcement, tack on with people they know in the area, maybe potentially militia units that they got in contact with when everything started getting nuts. There will be some active duty units that will fall in line with the DRA, but not as many as they think. And there will not be as many as we hope will come over to our side. So we will have a resistance that will be forming behind enemy lines here inside DRA territory. Primary elements I see in this are National Guard and reservists, law enforcement. All of these are people that have defected. And then you will have the bulk of the civilian side of this resistance will be military veterans. These are people that say They are still bound by their oath to the Constitution in the United States of America, and they will not betray that oath. They will not take an oath to the DRA. They do not accept what is going on. You will have some militias that will say the state is more important. They will sign on with the state. Others that will say the United States is more important. You know, it's going to be across the board. But you will see a massive influx into the resistance that will be starting up. You will see intelligence elements which are in the United States, even though they're not supposed to be. They will split also. Some of them will continue to stay loyal to the Union. Some, because of their political ideologies, like Brennan, will fall in line with the DRA and back that government. That will be the start of your intel network for your underground. I think we all can see just how chaotic this stuff's going to be in the beginning. Now, over time, the U.S. military, the actual Union military, will continue beefing up their forces along the borders. They will be bringing in equipment from overseas as fast as they can, as long as the United Nations will let them. The UN, I think, will call for the seizing of U.S. military assets overseas. Those military assets will be turned over on paper to the DRA, but in actuality will go to the UNPRO 4 for use in the United States territories or former U.S. territories. Alaska will be on their own during this because they will not join the DRA. They're too independent. They're going to be cut off for the most part. They're going to be on their own. They're going to be sucking. Now, the UN will continue building up their forces inside DRA territories. When they think they're at a sufficient level, I think at that point we're going to see it go from being a protection force to that next level of the operation where they're going to try to remove Trump from power. You will then see massive drives out of the DRA territories attacking into the Union territory. One of the things I think we'll probably see is they're going to try cutting across, going this direction. So you'll see troops coming in out of eastern Colorado, and then over here, Wisconsin, western Illinois, they're going to try fighting across to link up. You will see down here pushing into Texas. You will see troops out of South America and Central America that will be brought up on the border. They will infiltrate their special forces in beforehand to wreak havoc in here. They will be fighting across. Their goal will probably be to make it to the Mississippi River. Maybe they'll fight up going this direction to try to cut it even more. You'll see sea landings down here along the Gulf of Mexico. I think in that one you're going to see Cubans, Venezuelans, and other Central American troops. They will be supported by advisors and other personnel from the United Nations, from China, the United Nations, and whatever other countries decide to join in the festivities. You will also see pushes coming in going this way into the Dakotas, to push out of Canada into the Dakotas. Their purpose will be to try to secure the SAC bases up in here, our long-range B-52 bases, and also our ICBMs. And that's probably a goal you're going to see with these forces too. They're going to come in and try to take care of the bases in through here also, where we have ICBMs. Try to get those secured as much as possible, especially with special operations. Russia will occupy Alaska, and I think that's going to be the only territory they're going to occupy. They're going to come in, they're going to say they're taking back their lost territories that was stolen from them under the Tsar. And then they're going to stop there and tell the UN to go fuck themselves. They've helped out, but they'll continue to support monetarily and logistics-wise, providing ammunition and so forth. They'll be occupying Alaska to assist with cutting the pipeline of fuel coming down in, but that pipeline of fuel will be coming down into DRA territory, so who knows, maybe they'll be coming in to guarantee that it continues to flow or potentially reopen it. Who knows? Maybe Alaska Command, the 6th Infantry Division up there, will cut off the pipeline after this stuff starts going into place. Maybe they'll shut that off, they'll stop the fields. In that case, Russia would come in to reopen that so that the oil keeps flowing down into here. The troops out of South America, Central America, they're going to be attacking. They're definitely going to have to occupy these areas down in here to cut off fuel for the Union. If we can't get oil, we cannot process fuel for our tanks and our aircraft. Naval activity will be pretty heavy here on the East Coast. What U.S. naval personnel refuse to be part of the DRA, they will come down here into the Carolinas, Georgia. They'll find a base down there somewhere, shift out of Norfolk to some other location. Naval units that were in Hawaii and on the West Coast that refused to be part of the DRA, they'll probably move up into Alaska. Some of them will probably skirt down, try to come through the canal zone to meet up in here, but I got a feeling the canal zone will be closed to U.S. naval personnel under UN order. So they're probably going to end up going up into Alaska, getting caught up there by the Russians. Because I don't think they're going to want to go that long route, either going west into Asia, around Africa, or go south around the Straits of Magellan, which is still a very treacherous territory to navigate. If they have to, I'm sure they will. Now, as I said during the live stream, whether you believe it or not, this might be the best scenario. Because in this scenario, we have a large chunk of the United States that is still the United States. So those that are caught behind the lines in the DRA, you could still potentially see support from Special Forces, from the U.S. Green Berets and other Special Operations units, coming in, providing training, and assisting with supplying logistics. Seeing caches which are hidden around the United States that were meant for World War III getting cracked open and distributed. Finding caches of M16A1s, M14s, M60s, all that stuff getting hauled out, passed out to the resistance and the stores of ammunition that were with them. Not all of those stockpiles were turned in or destroyed at the end of the Cold War. A lot of that stuff is still there. It's strategic reserve. Problem is, I think a lot of governmental officials inside the DRA territory will be trying to secure those as quick as possible. So we're not going to get all of those. We'll get some of them. We will have low-flying aircraft coming in, paradropping needed supplies to the resistance. Could be ammunition, could be weapons, could be food, could be medical supplies, whatever it turns out to be. But we would have a source of supply then, because you're still going to have weapons manufacturers and all that that's still in these parts of the U.S. that will start cranking out as quick as they can. But on the reverse side, the ones that are caught inside DRA territories will also get taken over, and they will be cranking out weapons for the DRA. Stuff to consider. Let's hear some more wargaming on this. I do agree there will be sections of states that will refuse to secede and join the DRA. Like Virginia, you're probably going to have the northern part, eastern part will join the DRA. The western part will say screw it, and they're going to continue. They will follow through with the resolutions to join West Virginia. You could have places like eastern Washington, eastern Oregon that are going to say screw it, they're going to tack on with Idaho. Some people said, you know, Northern California would secede. Well, where the hell are they going to go? They're going to be surrounded. Their best option is just let the enemy take over and then just fighting in the guerrilla war. Because if they secede, then they got to control that territory. They have to hold it against overwhelming odds. And it will be overwhelming. One person said during the live stream they could see southern Minnesota seceding. I'd actually say it'd probably be a bit more than that, because what I know of for Minnesota, the Democratic strongholds, the leftists primarily, are in Minneapolis, St. Paul, way northern Minnesota, and a little bit down here in southern, the bulk of the state. You know, they might say forget it and potentially sign on with the Dakotas or potentially Iowa. Michigan, well, the UP, I think would say screw it, they're not going to join in, and that's going to become a major militia strong point up in there, but they'll have the same problems like Northern California. They're going to be surrounded, they're going to be cut off. They'll be able to hold out for a while, but not forever. And then you'll have rural areas all over the place that are going to say they're not part of it, but same thing, sooner or later you're going to get enough foreign military troops coming in there, they will subdue you. Then you're better off going in on the guerrilla model. Hit and run tactics, IEDs, sniping, sabotage, causing them as much pain as possible, breaking contact when they start bringing in forces to hit you back. Something I mentioned during the live stream, those of you that are saying your militia will only be in your county, you need to think larger than that. If you're going to lock yourself into such a small area, you will get destroyed. Figure you're going to be covering, say, half your state at least. So let's say you're down here in southern Colorado, it starts getting real hot down here, the enemy's launching too many operations. You either move west up into the mountains where you can take some of the pressure off, or maybe you move north for a while, lick your wounds, re-equip, reorganize, and then you go back into that area you left. Guerrillas do not hold territory. If you hold territory, you will get destroyed. Guerrilla units attack your enemy's weak points. And if that means you got to move a couple days to a different location to attack, then that's what you got to do. You don't just concentrate on the enemy that's close into you. You find where they're the weakest that you can exploit, and you can have the most success. Now, this is just a throw together thing, a possible. I'm not saying this is guaranteed. This is the scenario we're going to face. This is just one possible scenario. Who knows what the hell is going to happen over the next few months. I know there's people saying that Trump is too smart, too strong. He's not going to allow it to get to this point. I wish that was the case, but I just don't think so. I just have a feeling that they're going to try tearing the country apart and going back to the whole North versus South type of thing is their best option that they think. Remember, their ultimate goal is the destruction of the United States and the subjugation of the American peoples. We are not the NWO's main combat force anymore. They can draw more than enough people out of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East to accomplish their goals. They don't need us to go into those areas anymore. They can now lure them out of there with enough money that they'll go wherever they want or wherever they're told to go and follow whatever orders they're given. The United States has been superseded. And I think the ultimate quarterbacking on this will be done by the Communist Chinese, because we've seen the propaganda the past few years where the 21st century is supposed to be the Chinese century. They're going to be the lone superpower here in a couple years. Well, we'll soon see on that, won't we? So let's hear if you guys think this is plausible. You know, what do you think might occur in this scenario or another likely scenario? I don't want to hear any bullshit about Trump is God. Trump will stop everything with the snap of his fingers. He's not that powerful. He is not the savior. I still have arguments with family members who say Trump was sent by God. He's the savior. He's going to save us all. There's only one savior that God ever sent down to the earth, and it was not Donald John Trump. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. And for any of you Christians out there that keep saying that Donald Trump is a savior, you're a fucking heretic. You're turning your back on Christianity by saying that. You need to wake up and realize that. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.